Morning from the Silicon Valley in Northern California. Energized to be with you. I'm Mark Madrid, CEO of the Latino Business Action Network, collaborating with Stanford University to advance the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative. I have 2 precious minutes for which I'm most grateful to address you. And if you can't make a point in 2 minutes, then what's the point? So here it goes. 3 messages. 1, a message to you. Number 2, we matter. And number 3, we have to be architects of our own solutions. Back to number 1, I emit to you specific prayers and dialed up empathy and respect to whatever you're going through during these times. But we're gonna get through this with our ganas and resilience. Number 2, we Latinx matter. Our familias, our voices, our votes, our purchasing power, and our businesses matter. My dear friend Ana Valdez will momentarily relay that US Latinx, we have the fastest growing GDP in the entire world. And when it comes to our vote, Latinx determine the outcome of the presidential election. And our specialty lane at LBAN, Latinx entrepreneurship, some orgullo points for you. Over the last 10 years, in terms of the percentage growth of new business owners, Latinx, positive 34%. Everybody else, 1%. And hashtag Latina Power. We should all be comforted that 42% of our Latinx businesses are now Latina-led, and we're young and vibrant. 1 out of 3 of Latinx entrepreneurs are under the age of 45, which leads me to the final point. We must be architects of our own solutions. COVID-19 is real and disproportionately affecting Latinx. I should know, I lost my dad and almost lost my mom to COVID. And my heart goes to those of you who have experienced devastating losses. Our Latinx businesses are also, their lives are also at stake. And we must rise up and support them. We must shop Latinx. And for our entrepreneurs, Latino and Latina, we have to do business with each other and get business for each other, which is our mantra at LBAN. And our legislators, they must hear from us now for the urgent push for more stimulus. And I close with coming back to why we Latinx matter. Our familias, our voices, our votes, our purchasing power, and our businesses matter. We are no longer a sleeping giant familia, but an awoken, energized, and resilient giant that will continue to lift our American economy and our country. God bless you all, and let's amplify Latinx and power up. Now to my dear friend and esteemed colleague, Inara Tareque from the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate it. I will just start sharing my screen because I have a lot of data to share with all of you. All right, I think you can all see my screen now. So I would first like to start by highlighting the important role that Latino entrepreneurs and Latino businesses play on the US economy. And as Mark highlighted, in fact, in the last 10 years, the number of Latino entrepreneurs in the US grew by 34%, while US entrepreneurs overall grew in number by 1%. And we don't just see growth in count, but we see growth in performance as well. In 2019, the annual compound growth rate in revenue of Latino businesses was 14%, which is significantly higher than the US GDP growth rate of 2%. In fact, Latinos experience growth across virtually all industries. As you can see from the lower green bar on this chart, nearly 1 in 3 Latino businesses grew in revenue by more than 30% across almost all of these major industry sectors. However, we have identified in our research in the past that there exists a significant gap between Latino and non-Latino businesses in terms of scaling. Although Latinos are starting businesses at a faster rate than non-Latinos, as Mark highlighted and I highlighted, fewer Latino businesses are actually crossing the employment threshold in shifting from being a solo run business to a business with employees. And in fact, we see from our research that only 7 out of every 1,000 Latino individual in the US owns an employer business, whereas 19 out of every 1,000 non-Latino individual owns an employer business. And the gap in this rate is almost 3%. I am having some lag issues. I just want to make sure you can all still hear me. Can you? Okay, awesome. So one of you were stuck and I was a little nervous that my screen wasn't getting shared. Okay, great. Okay, so now I'm a little less nervous. So in that we see that there's a huge gap in scaling up, in that non-Latino businesses are scaling at almost 3 times the rate as Latino businesses. So what is the impact of this gap on the US economy? Well, we estimate that if the gap were closed, it would add nearly $1.5 trillion to the US economy, generate 5.5 million new jobs, and create over 650,000 new businesses. And this is really important, not just for the US economy, but it is also important for Massachusetts, because there's a large number of Latino businesses located here. And using the latest census data, we estimate that there are nearly 3,000 employer firms, and nationally, 9% of all businesses are employer firms. So we can estimate that nearly 30,000 businesses in Massachusetts are owned by a Latino or more. We just don't have updated numbers from the census yet. And in fact, these businesses grew in number by more than 8% between 2012 and 2017, and they are generating upwards of $4.2 billion in revenue and creating over 27,000 new jobs. So clearly, Latino-owned businesses play a vital role in the US economy and across Massachusetts as well. So switching gears a little bit, it also behooves us to discuss the importance of the impact of COVID-19 on Latino-owned businesses. And we have done significant research at the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship on the impact. And we conducted a survey between June and July of this year, and we surveyed 7,000 Latino-owned employer businesses, as well as a comparison group of white-owned businesses. So the following slides will discuss the impact of COVID-19 on these employer businesses. Our research shows that COVID-19 impacted both Latino and white-owned businesses alike. Comparable shares reported revenue decline, business closure, decrease in productivity, and layoffs. However, Latinos are disproportionately impacted, and because they're located in industries hard hit by the pandemic. As you can see on this chart, the accommodation and food services industry has the highest share of all businesses that report being negatively impacted by the pandemic. And 13% of all Latino employer businesses are located in this sector, second only to the construction industry. Now, while many of these businesses are indeed developing ways to overcome the impact of the pandemic, institutionalized support is essential to their recovery. The Paycheck Protection Program is one such program designed to help businesses through the pandemic. As I'm sure that many of you here are aware, the US Small Business Administration launched the PPP to help businesses keep their workforce employed during the coronavirus crisis. And our survey shows that although Latino-owned businesses had the hunger for PPP loans, as you can see from the second bar, 59% were interested, and however, only 33% ended up applying. Whereas for white-owned businesses, 49% were interested, but again, 33% ended up applying. So although Latinos had the hunger for PPP, they were less likely to apply, even if they had more interest in the loan. Moreover, Latino businesses had their PPP loans approved at half the rate of white-owned businesses, 10% compared to 17%. And as we go further down the funnel, an even smaller proportion of Latino businesses had full funding. They received the full funding that they applied for, 3% compared to 7%. And when we tried to analyze why this is actually happening, and this is ongoing research, but so far we see that Latinos reported, a higher share of Latinos reported that they lack the materials required to apply, so the required materials, and they also lack guidance on how to apply. However, despite these challenges, Latino businesses are equally optimistic as white-owned businesses about being able to recover from the pandemic. A staggering 80% of businesses approximately in both groups report that they are optimistic about recovery. And on this positive note, I would invite my friend Mark again to talk about the experiences that he has had in supporting Latino businesses through this pandemic, which has resulted in this monumental success with the ecosystem that Mark is involved with through the Slay It alumni program.
Thank you, Inara. Thank you for that powerful presentation. We appreciate your efforts. Absolutely. And so just a reminder, everyone, the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative is a collaboration between LBAN, a national 501c3 national nonprofit organization, and Stanford University. Inara, that was powerful research. I hope everybody takes a few points from there. But back to that slide about the Paycheck Protection Program. In terms of securing that money, you saw the roadblocks on why Latinos were accepted at half the rates of whites. Well, there was one big exception. Graduates of the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative Education Scaling Program. A staggering 82% of this class secured PPP funding as compared to their white counterparts that are scaled, which was 28%, as compared to 18% of Latinx scaled companies that had not gone through our program. So you might be wondering, well, how did that happen? You know how it happened? Is we were there, leading from the front, on the ground, making sure that our entrepreneurs felt supported. We have an alumni portal that binds all these Latino Scaling Program alumni together. So they were actually set up a peer-to-peer support system. So back in those crazy days of May and June, we were saying, you know what? This thing is being rolled out. This portal is open. No, it's not open. Or maybe it's open. We'll come back to you in 2 hours. When we were having issues with some of the national banks, then we were in contact with the national banks. We were in contact with the SBA, with the Treasury. And those long updates that came out every day, rather than say, here's the updated document that's 36 pages long, we said, how is this going to impact you? So that's how we led to that 82% securitization. Thank you, Inara.
Thank you. And I think that concludes our data presentation. Thanks so much, Mark, for your closing remarks.